Well, hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast. It is Tuesday morning, Tuesday the 12th of August, so no Friday night disco vibes on this show, but great vibes nonetheless. The sun is shining, Taylor Swift is releasing new music, the US Open starts in a week's time. All is well with the world. Matt Roberts, how you doing?
Very well. Yeah, what fun news to wake up to this morning about Taylor Swift's new album. As you said, the sun's shining. We're in a good place. I'm still getting through Springsteen's 7 new albums. They are feeding us.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. And most of it is going over David's head, but he's happy nonetheless.
Yep. Delighted for you both, and for the wider world who are apparently into this kind of thing. I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around how do you produce 7 albums in one go? I mean, how long did that take him?
Oh, well, those were lost albums from sort of...
Where do you lose them?
Over the last 40 years, he'd written and produced songs that he hadn't put out.
To be fair to Bruce, those 7 albums did take 40 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, Catherine, a big week to be sports podcasters, because apparently that's where you now announce a new album. I was
hoping you'd make that connection. Yes, we are. I mean, we shared the Time 100 list with New Heights, didn't we? We are how many months away do you think we are from having a global superstar on the podcast to announce a new album? It's a natural progression.
Is she going on her boyfriend's podcast, or is she working her way through the top 100? We are available, Taylor.
David, who would you have?
I might get into it if she does that.
Who would you have on the Tennis Podcast to announce a new album?
What, like an artist?
Yes. This is like Carlos Alcaraz, name a woman, isn't it? David Law, name a current.
Well, my favourite one's dead.
Don't bring the mood down, David. A current pop star. Name any current alive pop star.
I like this one my son's got me onto, called Banner or Banners. I don't know, but I like the music, and I'd like to go and see that live as well.
David's come and get me, please. Not quite sure of the name, but please come on the pod.
Yeah.
Or if it's a person or a band.
Yeah, that is all true. Yeah, it's the weekend all over again.
Right, let's talk about some tennis, folks. We're going to head to Cincinnati. We're going to start with the men's event. We've had wins for the usual suspects, Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, although very different kinds of wins, certainly in their opening matches. We'll talk about those a little bit later in the show. But I wanted to start with the movement, or certainly a movement, if you like, because in the early rounds of Cincinnati, we've already seen losses for Casper Ruud, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Daniil Medvedev and Lorenzo Musetti, continuing the trend of early losses for all 4 of those players. Casper Ruud lost to Artur Rinderknecht, Daniil Medvedev to Adam Walton, and Lorenzo Musetti and Stefanos Tsitsipas were both victims of Benjamin Bonzi, who of course took Daniil Medvedev out in the first round of Wimbledon as well. Let's take Musetti aside for now, because I do think his case might be slightly different. But with Ruud, Tsitsipas and Medvedev, Matt, we do seem to have a generation in crisis here.
Yeah, I mean, I would potentially slightly push back on Ruud as well, just because look, he has won a big title this year. He won a Masters 1000 event not that long ago in Madrid. Okay, that was quite an isolated result when you look at his season as a whole, but I still think he's capable of that level of tennis. He has shown it. I think he's been struggling with the knee, hasn't he, since Roland Garros, that that injury that he picked up that cost him there against Nuno Borges, kept him out of Wimbledon. And to me, I didn't see all of the match against Rinderknecht, but it certainly looked like he might still be a little bit compromised by that. But generally, I do absolutely agree. I mean, Medvedev and Tsitsipas in particular, the decline is pretty steep now, I think. Medvedev, to be honest, both of them we've talked about quite a lot, haven't we? Different reasons, but kind of the same overarching take that neither of them are the players they used to be, and it's hard to see them getting back up to that point again, given the new talent that's emerged since their decline, and just given the eye test when you watch them play now. I mean, Medvedev is the one who I saw here against Adam Walton, and look, he was clearly struggling big time in the conditions. Brutal heat in Cincinnati. We got some.
He put his head in the ice bin, didn't he?
He put his head in the ice bin. He sort of stripped most of his clothes off and got the air conditioner hose sort of pointing at various parts of his body. He looked a state, and I felt for him because it's brutal playing in those conditions. But, you know, Adam Walton is a guy who'd never won a set against a top 50 player, and he'd played 24 of them. You know, I know he's improving, Adam Walton, so that's perhaps a slightly misleading stat, but it's not a guy that you really should be losing to if you're Daniil Medvedev, and he's already lost 9 matches this year against players outside of the top 50. The last time he lost that many was 2017, and the most in a year since then had been 5. You know, so he's just look at the numbers and the sorts of players that are beating Medvedev. It points to a pretty steep decline. And last year we talked about it with his game and how his serve wasn't as threatening, how he was struggling to make impacts in the court with his shots, but he kept having good slam results. His slam results last year are actually really good, and they sort of propped him up. Well, this year the slam results have been really poor, and the general form on the tour has been poor, and this is where we are now with Daniil Medvedev, who is just constantly, for me, on upset watch, but it's no longer an upset. That's how I go into every tournament now, thinking about him and thinking about Tsitsipas as well. Like, they're big names still in the sport. I'm kind of drawn to their matches because there is a part of me that thinks, okay, these two have been such good players, let's see. But inevitably, they're losing early, and it's not a surprise now.
It's a shame, David, that they're kind of famously not friends, because I imagine they could offer quite a lot of support to one another just now. I did some maths for this section of the podcast, and the average rank of players that they have each lost to this year is 55 for them both. The average ranking of the players that they're losing to. Medvedev's last top 10 win on an outdoor hardcourt was Indian Wells last year. And for Tsitsipas, his last top 10 win on an outdoor hardcourt was against Medvedev in the Cincinnati final in 2022. And these are both players, okay, Tsitsipas is, you'd say his best surface is clay, whereas Medvedev, famously self-declared hardcourt specialist. But Tsitsipas is a slam finalist on a hard court. Like, I think it's okay to judge him somewhat by his hardcourt results, and you know these stats are pretty stark. And you know, I agree with Matt that Ruud is perhaps in a slightly different bracket, but the average rank of players that he's lost to this year is 41, and his last hardcourt win over a top 10 player was in Acapulco in February of last year. He got 2 of them there over Rune and de Minaur. These players are simply not a factor on outdoor hard courts.
Certainly no. I mean, and certainly not on a, like, they're not really factors anywhere on a regular basis, which they used to be. They used to be frequent contenders. You know, there are isolated moments. Medvedev's constantly banging on about Halle. Tsitsipas, do you remember when he won Dubai earlier this year? And he was really good. You know, there were reminders there that you thought, oh, this is the game that I remember. You know, this crowding of an opponent and an ability to take anything early and hurt you with forehands, and his movement and his athleticism. And then, you know, he then lost relatively early in both the hardcourt Sunshine Double tournaments. And you mentioned Ruud's win in Madrid, and again you think, oh yeah, that's the guy I remember. And they all look a bit burnt out. They all, in their varying ways. Tsitsipas, I think, injury is in addition to burnout. But he spoke at the start of the year about that Dubai win was kind of like a reaction almost to the terrible loss he took against Alex Michelsen in Australia when he was so anemic. And Medvedev more recently, it just feels like they're serial losers in early stages now to people that would never have got near them. And I do think like aura is part of that as well. It's not just the basics of your forehands and your backhands. I mean, I think you could look at all of them and think they might say, well, I'm not doing this as well, I'm not doing that as well. But they are not carrying themselves in quite the way they used to, and the opponents are not looking at them in the way they used to. They're thinking, if I hang around here, I've got a chance. And that's the thing with Medvedev, wins that first set, and then you think, actually, he's supposed to go away now and win this. And then next thing you know, he's drawn back in and he's kind of physically being defeated. I mean, it is some of the most horrible looking conditions I've seen at a tennis tournament this last week. So I don't envy these guys. But it's a worry, really, that they're the ones that are faltering.
Whose career of those three, or maybe of those two, kind of interpret the question how you would prefer, would you choose to have from this point out? I think Medvedev is 29. He's got 2 years on. I think Tsitsipas turned 27 today. Happy birthday, Stefanos. Hope you're not listening. And Ruud is 26. So I guess sort of logically you'd go with Casper Ruud, but results wise, whose career would you choose from this point?
I think I would take Ruud.
And out of Medvedev and Tsitsipas? Neither retire?
It's pretty close, are they?
Retire and go to Ibiza? Who would you choose, David?
I actually look at them all as very similar. I mean, there is that age difference, and I think because Ruud's got the clear clay court pedigree, I think his game still does stand up if he's fully fit. But the fact that he's getting niggles,
does it?
Tsitsipas is getting niggles.
You think Casper Ruud's game still stands up at the top if he's fit?
On clay, if he's fully fit. I mean, look, when I say at the top, I think he's got a problem if he's playing those top two. I think anybody has. But I still think he's in the group, in the top six.
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation about whether Ruud is in the mix at the French Open, which wasn't that long ago. Yeah. And look, maybe we read too much into Madrid and those specific conditions there, but he did play great in that tournament. And I kind of think the thing with Ruud is that the peak level he reached always seemed like a surprise to me. And it sort of did with Medvedev as well, but he sustained it for so long that he just became that player, consistent top 5, world number 1. So to see the drop off is then surprising.
I think it's hard for them too. I think that they struggle with that then, that they're not who they have managed to sort of somehow haul themselves to be.
What about Musetti then? I mean, his situation is very different. He's significantly younger. He does seem still generally on the upward swing of his career. And yet, Matt, he's crap on hard courts, and not seeming to be making any progress.
And I really thought this was going to be the year where the progress was going to be made. Because, look, he was sensational on the clay. Semi-finals or finals of all the big events that he played, he was brilliant. He obviously got that injury at the French Open, which then kept him out of the grass. And when he first came back on the hard courts, watching him against Norrie in Washington, I thought that injury was still lingering. He certainly wasn't explosive. But since then, I haven't watched his matches and thought injury is the problem. I've thought his game on hard courts is the problem. I think I've been trying to figure out what it is. I think the backhand is an issue for him on on the hard courts, because on the clay he can step back, he can give himself time, and he can rip it, and on the grass he can slice it, and he can't really do either of those things quite as effectively on the hard. And actually, if you look at Bonzi there with his 2 wins, I think he's targeted 2 kind of ineffective single-handed backhands on the hard court in Musetti and in Tsitsipas. He's had a clear angle of attack and game plan against them. Musetti, I know, has been sort of in his matches really complaining about his serve. His serve is not very effective on the hard court. He doesn't get that many cheap points. But I kind of just feel like even when he's at his best, Musetti, he often has sort of fluctuations in matches, and he has moments where he does something that seem a little bit mad. And I feel like with clay underfoot and with grass underfoot, he's got the confidence to sort of put those moments behind him and keep bringing it. Whereas on a hard court, it's almost like it just gets to him, and his sort of whole body language gets a bit negative, and he has this sort of stream of consciousness that he's constantly muttering and chuntering to his coach about, and it just feels like his confidence isn't there, and therefore he's just a lot more vulnerable. But I did think this would maybe be the year, because I know he was really targeting trying to qualify for Turin, and that actually might end up working against him, because perhaps he's putting a bit more pressure on himself on the hard courts. You know, he was suddenly, for the first time off the back of that clay season, in a really strong position to maybe qualify for Turin, and that would have been a really big deal for him, you know, playing at home. And it feels like he's playing with a bit of that pressure and that expectation maybe on his back, and it's all just leading to losses that, you know, against players on clay he would absolutely take apart, I think. So it's it's a tricky place for him right now, because it's a long time until we're back on the clay. Like, you've got to learn to, okay, it might not be his best surface, but he's got to get better on hard courts, because he can't just have 3 or 4 months every season if he's going to be a properly top player, which it does seem like his talent suggests he could be.
Do you think he will crack it, David?
Going to say yes. I'm going to say yes.
What is crack it to you? Like, is it have as good results on hard as clay? It's not quite that to me.
No. I don't think that.
But more than just, I mean, I do think he'll improve, just because you kind of have to, right? With just experience and time. Like, I think he's too good a player to not improve some. But like,
the skills are there.
Will he reach Grand Slam quarterfinals on hard courts?
I think he will. I mean, I look at it a little bit like Ruud. Now, I think Ruud overachieved by getting to the final of the US Open on a hard court, but I don't see that his game is perfectly suited to that surface versus clay. I don't see why Musetti shouldn't be able to do it to at least to a second week of a Grand Slam level at both Australia and the US multiple times.
And he actually played okay in Melbourne. He lost to Shelton in a really good match. I want to say 3rd round, I think, in Australia. He actually did start the season quite well on the hard courts, sort of by his standards, but it has really dropped off. And I do think that injury was just really poorly timed, in terms of, you know, he had a big break before his worst surface. So he's coming back on his worst surface, which I think is kind of a tricky thing to do.
But then if you only have like 3 or 4 months of a season, when it does put so much pressure on that time of the season, that like the chances are most injuries are going to be, but like increases the chances of injuries being poorly timed, like, because your time window is that much shorter, I suppose. He's too good not to make significant strides on hard courts, I think. But I am a bit alarmed at how little progress there seems to have been. He seems less alarmed. He and Flavio Cobolli, have we all seen the clip of them having a riotous time at Kings Island? I
haven't. Oh, interesting.
That is my style of putting a loss behind you. They seem very surprised to be sort of in the wake of the log flume water. Like literally, that's what that area is for. And they seemed
it was
very
adorable.
It was very cute.
He is still in the doubles.
Is he? Okay, great. Who's he playing with?
With fellow Lorenzo Sonego.
Ah,
That's
okay.
good for him, I think.
Yeah, good
And
luck
I think
to them.
if you're a top player and you go out early at one of these 2-week, Masters
find
1000
something to do.
events, so Kings Island and doubles sounds great.
Let's talk about the big two, shall we? Very Jannik Sinner things have happened and very Carlos Alcaraz things have happened. Jannik Sinner has won 2 matches in straight sets, although pretty different straight sets matches, it has to be said. Carlos Alcaraz has just played the 1 match so far. He won it, but he played 2 good sets and 1 terrible set in the middle. So Sinner has beaten Daniel Galan 1-1 in, I think, his quickest win ever, under an hour. I think we've all seen the clip, haven't we, of him having time to mop his brow mid-rally before hitting a smash. That pretty much summed up that victory. Slightly different straight sets win for him overnight, though, against Gabriel Diallo. Not even I stayed up for this one. I did watch highlights this morning, but obviously the highlights just showed everybody's great play. Which I don't think was necessarily representative of this match, because I get the feeling from what I've read that Jannik Sinner was, by his very, very high and consistent standards, David, pretty subpar in this match.
Yeah, it was, and it's interesting because his opponent I find very interesting. We've got a little bit of heat and humidity here in the UK at the moment. I mean, laughable levels compared to Cincinnati, but they were enough to wake me up at 2:30 in the morning, and whilst awake I turned my phone on, and it was
you wanted to see if the TS12 news was real, didn't you?
Yeah, that was it. And then I needed to Google who it was about, and I just turned on the live scores and saw that Sinner was in a second set tiebreak against Diallo. I thought, okay, I'm going to turn this on. And I turned it on, and it's 5-all in the tiebreak. Diallo wins the next point against the serve, 6-5, and it's just this fascinating moment. So, I'm aware of like the one-sided nature of these sets that Sinner's been getting, and suddenly this guy has got set point and pans to him. He's got the peroxide hair. He looks the business. Diallo just looks like somebody who believes I can beat any of these guys. He's 6'8". He's got a huge serve. He's quite happy to go to the net. I really like the way he carries himself. Steps up to the line, smashes the serve down, and the ball is back on his shoelaces on the baseline within an instant. It's the most perfect Novak Djokovic type return you could imagine, and you can't deal with the what he's hit. Diallo looked shocked to his boots by this return. So that's levels it. Go down the other end, he does it again, and suddenly he's match point down, mini breakdown. Sinner finishes the match. That's it, peril over. But a little reminder, and I think that it really is important to remember that Sinner is not unbeatable. He is the best player in the world in men's tennis right now, and recently it's taken, certainly at Grand Slam level, it's taken otherworldly stuff from Carlos Alcaraz to beat him. But I do think that there are players that can hurt him, and he can also have bad days. I didn't see enough of the match to be able to tell you what the bad day element of it was, but I can tell you that Diallo certainly carries some threat.
Well, I know that Sinner was very unhappy with his serving in the match, and he and Carlos Alcaraz both immediately went onto the practice court after their wins during this tournament, and apparently Sinner hit a load of serves. I think he got broken with 3 double faults in a game early on in this match against Diallo. It was also a very weird day and night in Cincinnati because there was a big power outage. There was a generator on fire. They lost all power, and there was a big suspension of play for a while, and then during the Sinner match, it was kind of like it was stuttering and restarting, and therefore causing all sorts of problems. Like the LED screen around the court went off for a long time, and they had to pause. A fire alarm went off in the building that like overlooks the centre court.
Is it just me, or does tennis have a disproportionate number of power outage related incidents?
Well, there was that big one in Madrid, wasn't there?
Yes.
There was the big one in Madrid that was a sort of Iberian Peninsula-wide thing
there was
that
a big
tennis
one
got
at the
caught
French
up in.
Open about 10 years ago, I remember, where they ended up with just they got one camera up and running, one fixed, very highly positioned camera, and I think it was during the Venus Williams-Kristina Mladenovic match, and sort of the players were barely visible.
Detail.
Anyway, okay.
Well, imagine my delight when this match is going on with all these interruptions, and I'm thinking, oh, you need a good umpire in that occasion. Of course, it was Greg Allensworth in the chair, just
It's
drama
all coming up, Matt Roberts.
drama
today.
magnet, and Sinner. So this fire alarm's going off, and both the players are at the net, and they're having to pause, and Sinner's like, I mean, I can play through that. Like he's like, if the fans, we're here for the fans. Like they're annoyed that we're having to stop. I can play through that, and I think Greg was like, okay. So yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is like it was a weird match in that sense, in that like they kept having to stop. Sinner actually seems to be in an incredible mood. I think I saw his Tennis Channel interview where he was really buzzing. He was laughing through these interruptions. Like there seems to be a sort of lightness to him, which I think there hasn't been in the last year with all the doping stuff.
Yeah, I do wonder if he's. Look, I know he won Cincinnati last year. Like his remarkable ability to not let the cloud that was hanging over him affect his tennis results is well documented and discussed by us and other people. Like extraordinary, but in terms of it must have affected the happiness he was able to experience while doing it. And I do wonder if he's now got the really direct, visceral comparison of being here last year, here being Cincinnati, not my living room, being in Cincinnati, compared to last year when he knew the announcement, he knew going public with the doping situation was looming over him. At that point, he knew that would be happening the day after Cincinnati, whether he won it or not. And that must have been grim, really. So I do wonder if sort of having that direct kind of, God, so different this year, it is helpful to him.
I think winning Wimbledon probably helps as well.
Yeah, sure.
Possibly
more. Yeah.
No, I think both. I really think it's a combination of everything right now for Sinner.
Yeah, he had a practice session with Emma Navarro.
Did he?
Oh, did he? I mean,
he got introduced then.
He went to the Tennis Channel set and he was asked about the mixed doubles, and he
just laughed.
He just laughed.
He's going to pull out, right? I mean, surely
he's going to win Cincinnati and pull out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so even if he was really into the mixed doubles, I don't think you can reach the final of Cincinnati and not pull out of the mixed. But I think he might reach the final of Cincinnati and not be that bothered about pulling out of the mixed. I could be wrong. And look, Jack Draper will be waiting for Emma Navarro.
Or anybody.
Yeah, I mean, literally anybody at this point. Let's talk about Carlos Alcaraz, shall we? Actually, no. I have one more question about Jannik Sinner before we move on. David, you said, as a reminder, that Diallo match, that he's not unbeatable. What type of player, what style of player do you think Jannik Sinner is most susceptible to?
Well, that type. I think people who carry threat in their own game. Look at what Dimitrov managed. Look what Bublik managed. These are players that carry threat, and Diallo walks up to the line believing if I hit my spots, you ain't getting the ball back. And I think that there aren't that many like that. I mean, I would have said Shelton, but because that matchup really hasn't worked for Shelton at all so far, I think that is maybe unlikely. I think more likely at the US Open than anywhere on the Grand Slam stage. But I still think it doesn't look like a good matchup at all for Shelton. Some do. So I think it has to be people like that that are prepared to go for it.
Do you think it's variety?
I don't think of it really like that. I think of it more as, being able to mix that in is fine, but I think there's a degree of shock and awe. Hold your serve, hold your serve, hold your serve, put the scoreboard pressure on, win a couple of points in the tiebreak.
But he dances in a pressure storm.
Well, how about Adrian Manarino in the next round?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be my pick. Didn't he beat your man, the best player in the world?
He's beaten the best player in the world and Tommy Paul.
He's qualified, beaten the best player in the world and beaten Tommy Paul. Bad loss for Tommy Paul, that, by the way, because he needs to be making hay on the US hard courts. But Adrian Manarino in the year 2025.
It's very much giving that run he had at the Australian Open, and he then ran into Novak Djokovic and won about, one game, 2 games, something like that.
Giving that. I won't be staying up into the wee hours to watch Sinner Manarino.
No,
I'll watch the highlights.
He's not the type.
No.
That will cause threat.
Okay, Carlos Alcaraz. He very much is the type to win a tennis match 6-1, 2-6, 6-3 over Damir Dzumhur in the opener of a Masters 1000 event. Could this possibly, David, have been more trademark Carlos Alcaraz? And will this type of match ever not be trademark Carlos Alcaraz?
It's a great question. I've always thought that this won't last. This is just something he's doing while he's young until he's kind of locked his game down. But there's absolutely no sign of that at all. I mean, this was the quintessential Carlos Alcaraz performance in the first match of a tournament after a break. I mean, admittedly, I think playing Dzumhur exacerbates that because he's a shot maker and he likes to sort of show off, and then Alcaraz gets drawn into all that nonsense, and he's absolutely smashed through this first set, and then the next 5 minutes later he's 4-1 down, and he just how is that happening? And then in the third set, he goes flying up 4-1 Alcaraz, then he gets broken again and he's 4-3, and you think, well, actually, I mean, if he's not careful, he's going to lose this, and then he just wins 2 more games, and that's the match. And I mean, there was one extraordinary rally where he was lobbed and he manages to win it, and then it's finger to the ear, turn around, and we're all, everybody's pumped. But I don't think it's a very good performance, really. Not really. It's not what you would be wanting.
Do you know how many points he won on his second serve in the second set?
I don't.
It was 0, David.
Oh, God.
It was 0.
Serve bot Alcaraz.
Yeah, there's some serve bot takes that haven't aged well. Although his first serve, he's serving bombs on the first serve. The speed seemed to have gone up, and yet would I say Alcaraz's serve is in a brilliant place? I'm not sure that I would. What do you think, Matt?
Oh, I think David said it perfectly, but also I wouldn't read too much into this because it just is what he does. And
do you think it will always be what he does?
I'm starting to think so. Yeah, I mean, I've been on the same journey as David, because there have been odd moments in his career where I've thought, okay, he's really putting it together now. He's just beating players handily, but then he's sort of back to this, and I think it's his sort of DNA as a tennis player.
I mean, this might be an exaggerated example because he is coming off the back of off the back of a Grand Slam loss followed by 3 weeks of holiday, which is more holiday than he would even have in the off season, I think, because we're not talking training block. I'm sure there were some workouts in that 3 week period, but it sounds like he really had proper holiday. He went to the south of Spain for a week, didn't he, and had holiday, Ibiza vibes. and then he spent 2 weeks with his family. So maybe this is an exaggerated situation of, it can take a while to get your head back in the game. David forgot how to do podcasting.
Correct.
Last week.
And we're both brilliant at it, really.
Exactly. Maybe it's that. I'm just trying to cut him a bit of slack.
Who's he got now? Medvedev, is that right?
Medvedev. David's our Medvedev guy. Can he be
Well,
can he be more of a threat than Adrian Mannarino to Jannik Sinner?
I do find Medvedev very interesting because I'm a bit worried about the Tennis Podcast Meets Curse, because when I met him at the French Open and he was so bullish the way he was talking, and then he retired from his next match and he was in a terrible state.
Mboko saved the Tennis Podcast Meets Curse forever.
Yeah,
I think.
But
We've got credit in the bank there.
Yeah, when I spoke to Medvedev that time, he did voice his frustration about not having been able to translate what is clear potential and clear form in pockets into a sustainable ranking that just has you in all the tournaments easily and so forth. But I do think he is one of the guys that has real threat. And he's one I would name as a guy that Sinner wouldn't necessarily love to come up against, because he has point-ending power. In a one-off match, he backs himself to beat anybody, and it's the piecing together of the rest of his career that's been more of a problem. I'm fascinated.
Matt, Medvedev, a threat? This will be out of date soon, so be careful.
I mean, given what we saw from Alcaraz in his first match, I think you would have to say at this specific tournament, yes, Medvedev could be a bit of a threat for him. I'm less sort of across Medvedevic's career generally than David is, so I don't feel quite as qualified to make. Because
he beat Artifice at that next gen, you see. So I understand Medvedev on the basis that he beat Fils.
Have you seen what the next gen field is shaping up to be like this year? It's a fallow next gen year. I mean, Fonseca's still
I'm not across the
age eligible, but he's not going to play again, is he? No, it's not a good next gen situation. Fonseca, by the way, what's going on? Lost to Terence Atman. I mean, Atman also beat Flavio Cobolli. That's a good couple of wins for him, but it's not happening for Fonseca, isn't it? Do you think this is just your classic, life has changed for him in the last 6 months, and there will have
I'd have thought so.
been a natural adjustment to that?
I generally think the results he was having, or the performances he was putting in, were jaw-dropping, beyond what is realistic to keep producing. And I mean, people like me got carried away and said he's going to win the French Open. But, realistically, that doesn't happen very often like that, does it? So I think the fundamentals of his game are strong, and he will come good. But it's going to take a bit longer.
His scheduling's quite interesting, isn't it? Because he really is pretty much only playing the big events, which is kind of what we always ask players to do when they're really good. Like cut down on your events and sort of focus on the main ones. I do wonder whether for him, still in the developmental phase of his career, it would actually be prudent to play a few other events and get some wins.
Some winning.
It's almost like he's scheduling for the amount of hype that he's got, rather than for the actual game that he's got at the moment.
And scheduling, assuming that he's going to win a lot of matches at each event.
Yeah.
And therefore play a lot of matches at each event.
But actually he ends up losing and therefore not playing much and having a long time between matches. I feel like
he's not even got doubles, has he? He's kicking his heels at Kings Island exclusively. Which
I
just worse things to do.
I just feel like when you're like that, you can play a lot of matches, and I think maybe also just perhaps he's not as physically ready as I thought he was. Like perhaps like the front half of the season being so much better than the latter half. Perhaps he just is finding it just tough on the tour kind of at the moment, and I feel like a way to build that up would be to kind of play more. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he schedules going forward, because I mean he was again, I watched quite a lot of this match on replay this morning, so I just found it such an intriguing result. Like Terence Attman to me has always been a bit of a sort of troll figure. I've never really taken him.
I mean, last
that
time I saw him, he was being booed off court by his own crowd at Roland Garros.
Yeah.
That's who Terence Attman is to me.
Right. I mean, he's clearly talented, but what was striking here was Fonseca was a passenger. Like he was being bossed around, and I think if I had to pinpoint one thing, and there's lots of things, but Fonseca's return is really, really below par. I think, especially off second serve, he doesn't really know how to. I don't know whether to step back, to come in. He just looks totally lost trying to return serve at the moment. So I think that's a,
but
that's
Feast
a big
was like
area.
that,
Right.
the start of last year, and I just think if you're as good as they are, you can sort those things out with a few tweaks.
He did technically get a win in the opening round, Fonseca against Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, but that was by retirement. A new devastating way to lose for Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, Matt. He's really racking up quite a CV of those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think it was heat. I think he was struggling in the conditions, but he was.
And he's not alone with that. We've had a few, but Artur Rinderknecht yesterday was a really upsetting sight. He ended up retiring as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was 7-6, 4 love, 30 love up, Davidovich Fokina. I mean, he's almost there, and yet he didn't win another game. He lost that game from 30 love up, went 5-4 down in the set, and had to retire. So that was brutal for Davidovich Fokina.
And a shock loss for Alex de Minaur to Riley Opelka, who I suppose all the cliches about playing a guy with a game like Riley Opelka, like toss of the coin, anybody can lose to him, but
Alex de Minaur had never lost to him. He was 5-0 against him, and I do remember a few years ago Opelka saying what a nightmare he found playing de Minaur. I've always thought that actually de Minaur would do really well in that matchup, and as you said, Opelka is tricky, but
I absolutely do not think he's anywhere near the Tsitsipas Ruud Medvedev discussion that we had earlier, Alex de Minaur. But he is on burnout watch for me. He is on, potentially have you peaked? Like, I don't see a steep decline coming for him at all. I think he's going to hang around and be not far off his peak for a long time. But I do just wonder if that style of play and the fact that he's already talked about burnout, I don't know, he's just on amber alert for me, Alex de Minaur. Is that unfair?
I mean, look, he's already spoken about that, hasn't he? About how, when speaking to him at Wimbledon, I remember thinking, "Cracky, this really is a day-to-day thing for him now. He's trying to manage this situation." But I still see enough good results, and I just think it's a management case. I don't think his form's suffering like those other guys. They look lost. They look like they don't really know what their best self looks like anymore. De Minaur, absolutely. I think De Minaur's playing some of the best tennis of his career, but it's a tough.
Do you think he'll continue to qualify for Turin?
Yeah, I do.
For the foreseeable few years.
Yeah, I certainly think the next year or two he's going to be in that conversation, certainly.
Yeah, I think being a Turin contender is probably, to me, Alex de Minaur's. That would be a really good season for him, because there are players with bigger games who can probably win bigger titles. But
he Sheltons, for example.
Right, but he builds
Draper,
his season
maybe.
on that sort of week in, week out consistency.
Yeah.
I suppose like kind of everyone to me is on Amber Alert for burnout.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I would feel. Like if it can get Alex de Minaur, do you know what I mean? It feels like it can get everyone, and he has been through it. I kind of just think he will manage to avoid the real trappings, the real pitfalls of it. But
all of tennis on Amber Alert for burnout. Yeah, permanently. Folks, just before we move on to talk about the WTA event in Cincinnati, as you've probably gathered, we're pretty pumped about the US Open. It'll be happening this time in a week. It'll be happening, and we'll be there. And more specifically, the reimagined US Open Mixed Doubles Championship presented by Vital Proteins will be happening. It's going to be a must-see event. We'll be seeing it. We're getting there early to make sure whatever we think of it, we are going to be there, and we're going to be wanting to watch it. Both of the recent Wimbledon champions, Iga Swiatek and Jannik Sinner, have entered with their partners Casper Ruud and Emma Navarro, and they're joined on the acceptance list with teams like Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu, Madison Keys and Francis Tiafoe, and Elena Rybakina and Taylor Fritz. And that is not all. Novak Djokovic has entered with compatriot Olga Danilovic. Ben Shelton plays with the world number one doubles player Taylor Townsend. That's a team that I'm particularly hype for. And even Venus Williams has signed up to compete, and any opportunity to get a glimpse of Venus Williams is an absolute treat. So the event takes place over the 19th and 20th of August, and to find out what else is planned for the amazing US Open Fan Week, including free access to the qualifying tournaments, featured practice sessions and brilliant off-court activities, go to usopen.org/Fan Week. Right, the WTA event in Cincinnati. Let's start, shall we, with a match that we were all engrossed by last night. I'm sure the same is the case for many of you listening right now. Aryna Sabalenka beating Emma Raducanu in a deciding set tiebreak, 7-6, 4-6, 7-6. Sabalenka extending her tiebreak record for 2025 to 18 wins and just one loss. Not always the absolute highest quality match. I don't think Sabalenka will put this in her highlights reel of great matches. It was a lot of unforced errors from her, but an utterly compelling match. I absolutely loved it, Matt.
Yeah, I think a real sort of lesson from the summer has been more Sabalenka-Raducanu matches, please, because the one at Wimbledon was compelling as well, and this one very similarly so, if not as high a quality, I would agree. Raducanu began the match so well, like hitting the ball brilliantly, doing damage. I sent a very David Law style text 2 games into the match, like, God, Raducanu's playing well.
She won 9 points in a row. She won the first 9 points in the match.
Yeah, and then like lost 4 games in a row, and it was like, okay, this is still Aryna Sabalenka.
That's why you've got to send the texts while they're relevant.
Yeah.
Right.
You've got to strike while the iron's hot with those sorts
Although
of
I then
takes.
said I'm not sure Raducanu will win another game at that point, 4-2 down. That aged well too.
Hot takes were flying around.
They were flying about. That's how into it we were. And yeah, look, I think Raducanu played closer to her best than Sabalenka played to hers in this match. But still, just really, really encouraging match from Raducanu. I think the serve in particular was so effective in this match, particularly from the second set onwards. And, you know, she's got obviously a new coach, Francisco Roig, going in there, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that partnership and sort of our first real view of it during a match. But what strikes me is that you see in a match like this what a new coach going in, like why you would be drawn to the Emma Raducanu sort of project, to put it in really sort of horrible football parlance. But like, there's just so much in her game that if you can tap into it, she can hurt the best players in the world. And obviously Raducanu's spoken about not feeling like her quality of shot is quite there with the best players in the world, and I do agree with that. But I think we saw little parts of this match where it absolutely was there with Sabalenka, but we also see the other elements of her game, the way she can absorb some of Sabalenka's power, her hand skills on the baseline. I think her fitness has improved a lot. You know, this was a long match and in grueling conditions, and yet I wasn't worried about Emma Raducanu sort of lasting the course in it. In fact, it was Sabalenka who seemed to be struggling physically a bit more in parts of this match. So much good for Emma Raducanu. There was an incredible 13 deuce 23-minute game at 3-4 in the third set that Emma Raducanu eventually held. Very reminiscent of the game they had in the first set at Wimbledon, when again Emma Raducanu held. You know, just these battles that Emma Raducanu was coming through. And yeah, I absolutely loved this match, but the difference was Sabalenka in the tiebreaks, and that is a phenomenal record that she's got. 16 in a row she's won, and it's slightly, I know we talked about it at Wimbledon, but I still feel like we haven't given it the credit it deserves. Like, and I say we, I mean us, but also just like tennis as a whole hasn't been as across this Sabalenka tiebreak record as we, for example, used to be across Novak Djokovic's tiebreak record. I think it's because with Djokovic, there was such a clear tactic that he had in those tiebreaks, locking his game down. It was like he just went into a slightly different mode. I feel like with Sabalenka, I haven't quite figured out what she's doing to win these tiebreaks, other than being, to use Friday's word of the pod, like so clutch and just like being the best player in the world in the biggest moments. She still feels like she's playing her game, but just bringing it. And it's an incredible thing, especially for someone who like has had a bit of an issue bringing her best tennis at the latter end of majors. Like, there is a world where Sabalenka isn't always playing her best tennis in the biggest moments, and yet in tiebreaks, which are like the biggest moments in matches, she's doing it repeatedly. So I kind of find that fascinating. Yeah, absolutely loved this match. I thought both players came out of it, you know, with so much to be really positive about, to be honest. And those are kind of my favourite matches.
Yes, Emma Raducanu, this is the first time she looks like not the first match or tournament, the first sort of consistent period where I've really thought of her as like a properly hardened pro tour tennis player. And so much of that is about her body. Her body seems able to stand up to it, and she obviously has confidence in her body in a way she hasn't done before. I feel like you can see she has core strength like never before. Those returns that Sabalenka hits, a little bit like the one you described from Jannik Sinner earlier, where you think you've hit a good serve and suddenly you're just rocked back, shocked by this booming return that pushes you back. And so often against power hitters like that, she's been caught out by those returns, and you see her getting pushed back and instantly off balance. I feel like she's able to stand up to those sorts of shots physically and not get instantly rocked back in a way that she wasn't before. I still think the movement out wide from side to side needs maybe a little bit of work, not necessarily the speed, but kind of the balance when she gets there and the shot she's able to produce once she gets there, and maybe the recovery from being taken into the corners. But look, the signs of improvement are so clear from Emma Raducanu, and that's kind of before Francisco Roig, I presume, has really been able to have any kind of impact. And that is a man with ideas, David. He's got thoughts, and we are hearing those thoughts. He is a chatty man. Now I'm wary with this, that like we are at the mercy of the television produces with this stuff, right? With the on-court coaching, it might be the microphone is better that they've got on the coaching box on centre court in Cincinnati than at other tournaments. It might be that we're just hearing a better version or hearing more of what the coaches have to say than we do elsewhere. But purely on the basis of what we saw and heard last night during this match, he has thoughts, and he is making sure that Emma Raducanu hears them. What do we think of all that?
Well, at least he was trying to. I mean, the thing is, I think we heard a lot more of what he'd got to say and think about than she did, because she's so far away from him, and she actually got ticked off by the umpire for going over to him, which is absurd. I mean, if you're going to have courtside coaching, and she's saying, yes, but you're playing music, I can't hear him, so I've got to go physically closer if you want, otherwise give me the earphones and I'll hear what all the viewers are hearing, because they're hearing everything.
The rule is basically you're allowed to sort of passively take on
ridiculous
as much on-court
stupid
coaching, but you're not allowed to proactively go over and seek it out.
Total joke.
I think unless like your opponent is taking a bathroom break or something.
Went off court for an outfit change, didn't she? And Raducanu instantly went over to Francisco Roig.
It's almost like
sort of
we're
downloaded his brain.
We're allowing coaching, but we don't want anybody to know about it. Just get over it.
It's a stupid fudge at the moment.
But I mean, in terms of look, there was a good 45 minutes where we didn't hear from Francisco Roig at all. Now, they may have just turned off
I think they
turned
off his mic.
Because he was, when you could hear him, he was relentless. And we heard not a peep out of the Sabalenka box. And I could see them talking at times and you couldn't hear them. So that's an element of it. But, yes, I mean, he was ongoing. And I mean, look, some of what he's saying I found really fascinating. For instance, you talked about her ability to absorb the power of the shots coming towards her. He kept saying, feel the ball, don't kind of hit the ball, as though he wanted her to trust that she didn't have to panic and try and meet fire with fire all the time. She could just use it. He was strong on where he wanted her to stand. Personally, I was thinking, well, if she can hear all this, how long until she gets irritated by it? Because it was so non-stop, and I'm sort of thinking, gee, if I've got a mind of my own, I don't necessarily want to hear this all the time.
What we don't know is whether they've had a conversation about what she
absolutely
wants.
Yeah.
Because I would be irritated by that, and I would find it totally overwhelming. I've absolutely no idea if she's saying, I want to hear it, I want constant sort of reassurance, and if she hasn't said that's specifically what I want, I imagine she might have been slightly off put by it, although she played great, so maybe not. Maybe she's like, wow, this works, let's keep doing this. Within
this specific match, it seemed well received on Raducanu's end. She didn't seem annoyed by it, and I liked that his comments were, I think, generally positive in tone and constructive. It seemed in this specific match like it worked, but I always think it's a little bit of a red flag generally when there's that much relentless stuff coming from the box, like telling you where to serve and where to stand and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure that lasts all that well. When things start going against you and you've got your coach constantly telling you stuff, that's when it's harder to receive. And just like, what sort of player are you moulding there? Like one that fully relies on you? I'm not sure that's good either. So I'm fascinated to see how it's going to develop. Coaches that want players to fully rely on them, that I find to be a red flag generally. You should want to empower your players, surely, to as far as possible. But this is small sample size.
Very early stage, and
she played great. So
she played great, and also I quite liked that he was saying, "You're the better player." He was sort of trying to really
Yeah, big
I mean,
rock.
I think's great, when they were going into that third set. And she was very close. She served out of her mind.
She did, yeah. There was a lot going on in that match, wasn't there? There was a point where there was clearly a lot of noise happening. She said, I can't hear my coach because of the music. And then I think it was in the second set or the third set, there'd been a baby crying for a long time. And Raducanu, after a while, said to the umpire, Miriam Blay, I think it was, she said, can we do anything about that? And Miriam Blay was like, well, it's a child. It's a
do you want
child
me to take
crying.
it out?
She said, I can ask them to leave. What would you like me to do? I was very triggered by this. It really annoyed me. Miriam Blay's a great umpire, and this might just be all me. It really annoyed me that she put that decision on Emma Raducanu.
She was quite arsey with Emma about that, actually, I thought.
It's lose-lose, isn't it? Either you're the absolute twat that asks for the baby and its parents to be kicked out, or you have to continue to put up with the screaming child.
Yeah, I don't think that was the right way to handle that particular instance by the umpire.
It reminded me of when a woman asked me to switch from my aisle seat to a middle seat so that she could sit across the aisle from her family on a plane.
Yeah, that's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because now I'm in a situation of either being a total arsehole, which is the route I took, or sitting in a middle seat for a flight, which I go to great lengths to avoid. And if that's important to you, you too can go to those lengths to avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also think, the parents there have got to take the kid out. It's a boiling
Absolutely.
hot day.
Yeah.
The baby's screaming. Get out of there.
Yeah, do better parenting.
Go and watch in the shade on outside court or something.
Yeah. And don't make it Emma Raducanu's problem.
No.
Here. Thanks. I feel seen, Matt. Thank you. Madison Keys is at it again. Saved match points to beat Ava Lees. And then beat Aoi Ito last night, my new favourite player, in very different circumstances. Kind of flattened her. Aoi Ito, by the way, was just absolutely bamboozled Pavlyuchenkova in the previous round. That was so much fun. But Madison Keys and her saving match points. She's a great show at the moment, isn't she, Matt?
Oh, she's been... I actually kind of think her and Sabalenka have played so many good matches this year. Keys just continually all season coming back from the brink. And she was asked about it on Tennis Channel on her interview there at the desk. And, she was being heaped with praise. Like, wow, you keep doing this. And she was kind of like... Yeah, but what am I doing? Constantly putting myself in that position. What am I doing? I just really, really loved her sort of attitude. And look, she was in trouble against Ava Lees, and she gave some great insight into how the court speed, which is, most players seem to think it's playing really quickly in Cincinnati. She said Lees is a great exponent of absorbing pace and of redirecting it. So Keys said at the start of this match, she was hitting the ball to Lees with big power, but actually that was the worst thing she could be doing because Lees wanted that power and she was redirecting it. She was causing all sorts of problems. But Keys said, if I can get width on my shots, that's when the court speed helps me because suddenly I'm hitting these big shots and players having to chase them down. They've got less time to do it because the conditions are fast. And I thought that was really interesting analysis, and she was in big trouble in this match, Keys. Not only match point did she have to save, but she was love 30 down in the third set, and then she just put together a string of points, the like of which she just has kept doing this season when her back's against the wall. I find it so compelling. Now we've seen that tennis win a major. I'm just so drawn to Madison Keys matches at the moment. And she came up with a completely ridiculous backhand winner down the line in the tie-break that hit the sideline. And yeah, she just keeps coming up with it. And I think she wants her form to be a little bit better, but she's
she in the
finding
mix
it at
for
the
the US
right
Open?
time. To me, yes.
Yes, is she
Me
in
too.
yours?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of that, because of the clutchness, the big time stuff. The kind of like, I'm going for it. Might not make everything, but I'm going for it, and you've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Winning from match points down does something to a player. It gives you just an extra layer of armour, I think. Yeah, absolutely in the mix. And she's got Rybakina next, David, which also has winning from match point down kind of written all over it, potentially.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, these tournaments, they just go on forever. But there are some good matchups percolating, aren't there? And there's a perfect one pretty early on, really. But there's some good matches out there that are going to be set up now that the thing's finally getting going.
Yeah, although not for Iga Swiatek. She played her first match on Saturday, and she'll play her next one on Wednesday. She beat Anna Potapova, and then Marta Kostyuk had to withdraw from her scheduled next round match with that wrist injury that she was troubled by in Canada as well. So Swiatek's having a weird tournament already. Matt, you multi-screened some Amanda Anisimova last night. I know you'll have been disappointed by the result, but was Anna Kalinskaya's dog any kind of consolation to you? Because there were some good dog scenes, very good dog scenes.
No, I turned it off by that point.
I'll send you some clips.
I am aware of Kalinskaya's dog though. Bella, I
dog.
believe. I believe Bella
dog.
is the name of the dog.
It's a blonde, a toffee dachshund, long-haired dachshund. She came on.
And she was wearing a little.
She was wearing a little hat, a little bonnet.
Yeah, I did see the scenes on social media and was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have turned off in such disgust.
Was she bad, Anisimova?
No, I think she wasn't great, but I wouldn't say she was really bad either. She lost her way at the end of both sets. She had 15-30 on Kalinskaya's serve at 5-4 in the opener, didn't take that chance and then lost the set. And she had triple break point at 4-3 in the second set, didn't take those and lost her way. She let those moments get to her. Maybe some of the resilience that we've talked about a lot this year, being brilliant, was kind of missing in this one. And look, it's obviously been a slightly tricky stretch since the Wimbledon final. She played great against Raducanu in Canada, but that was kind of it. I do think she was hurt here by having a walkover in her first match. She was meant to play Jean. That match didn't happen, so she's waiting around for a match, and suddenly she's got Kalinskaya, who's a really good player, who'd already got a tight win, was match tough, and she was match tougher than Anisimova in those big moments. But it has spared us a Swiatek rematch, because that match again was lurking in this draw. They weren't far away.
You're always on alert for that now, aren't you?
Yeah, just so much trauma.
It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, it will. And look, probably would be a good thing if
it'll be
did
better than
happen.
last time.
It has to be better than last time. I think for Anisimova, the thing is she's at least going to be high seeded at the US Open. If you think back to last year, she went into that tournament unseeded. She played Zheng Qinwen in the first round. There are some dangerous unseeded players potentially at this year's US Open, but I feel like she is going to be able to work her way most likely into the draw in a way that she just hasn't really been able to do since Wimbledon. So,
Is she in the mix?
Yeah.
David? Matt is not a reliable answerer of this question.
I'm going to say yes, because I feel like her top level is such that she can win any of these things. And I don't feel... And look, I think she needs some form, obviously, and some... But even though there've been a couple of losses the last couple of weeks, I think there's plenty banked for the year that if she can get into the draw, get up and running, I think she's absolutely a contender for the title. Yeah.
I do think the US Open, and this is a factor for a lot of players, but the conditions can vary so much at the US Open, unlike kind of Wimbledon, for example, where, okay, you might get a hot day, but it's not going to be, by their standards, awful. She was playing in the heat of the day yesterday in Cincinnati, and look, I think she's got a lot better at dealing with those sorts of conditions, but it's not her preferred conditions. Like, I feel like along the way at the US Open, and that's what really separates the very best players. They can kind of handle absolutely everything. You're not worried about the conditions of a match. But I think Anisimova could do with maybe a little bit of luck of the draw in that sense, like not get a horribly sticky day session match that just like takes it all out of her. When we think about Wimbledon, she did say how much it took out of her beating Sabalenka on that hot day and how tired she was after that. Like, I think that's kind of a factor in her US Open as well. And again, that's maybe an improvement she just still needs to make. But right now, I think it is a factor for her, like the conditions of a match. I think of Doha. She played all her matches last on, basically, at night. And the conditions were the same every time. It was still, it was a bit cooler. I think these are sort of elements that can determine how well Anisimova plays.
Barbora Krejcikova, biggest win of her comeback, 3-setter over Alina Svitolina. Great to see for Krejcikova. Those scenes of her exiting Wimbledon will really haunt me. So glad to see her put that behind her. And kind of the last result I wanted to mention, Emma Navarro, whose dad obviously owns this tournament and has invested $200 million in this incredible redevelopment for the complex. And when we talked about the event on Friday, I hadn't quite digested exactly how renovated this place is. Like, it's totally on steroids this year. And look, his ownership of that tournament is separate to the fact that his daughter is a top tennis player, but I'm sure he would have been hoping that she would have at least gone on a run and not lost her opening match to Ella Seidel, which is actually what ended up happening. It's quite something, though, when you see those aerial shots that they're giving us a lot of, David, on the broadcast, because they're obviously wanting to show off these renovations. And, well, good luck to them. I would be wanting to show them off as well. You can see the 200 million, put it that way.
Yeah, they've done an amazing renovation job, and it's a cool facility. I do sometimes have some issues with the visibility of the ball on the centre court when it's really gleaming sun in certain angles, because they've changed the colour coding, haven't they? It's always been darker blue court with a green surround, the same as the US Open, to get that US Open series going, which I must admit I preferred that. I like that idea of having an identity for a swing of American hard courts.
I liked the US Open series.
Yes, so did I. I think there's a lot of sense.
Why did
to
that die?
Don't know. I mean, I think it's a shame. But I really like what they've obviously done a great job. The players love going there. The problem is it's so hot at the moment. It looks like a miserable place to be spending time. And it's out of their control. It's where it is, and it's the time of year.
I've covered that event once in 2016, maybe 2016, I think, and I think I struggled with the heat there more than the US Open. I found it absolutely brutal.
And
they do have a nice cream sponsor, though. That helps.
It does affect the vibe of the matches, when people can't,
and the vibe of the crowd. It's horrific.
Well, that's what I mean. Like when people can't sit in those non-shaded seats, it just looks empty, and
people look sleepy.
It's a shame.
And this is all a bit much, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think the brightness of that centre court has been a problem for a while. Like I don't think that's to do with the colour change. I think
really?
I think it's something to do with the position of the camera there on the centre court, which they've moved about a lot in Cincinnati. It used to be really low in Cincinnati. Now it's one of the higher ones, and yes, something's wrong, because as you said, during the day session it's It's really hard to see the ball. Like really,
You
it's
go
too
to other
bright.
courts, it's not
It's
a court
fine.
colour issue because they're perfect on other courts.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tough scene to have spent $200 million making somewhere really sexy, but
Can't see the ball.
for the ball not to be visible.
Sabalenka called out the lack of space in the player dining as well. Did you see
Is
that?
she?
That's very Alejandro Davidovich Fokina calling out having to play at 11 a.m. Was it 11 a.m. or 10 a.m.?
Oh, it was 11. It was a perfectly normal time.
11 a.m. What a sport. Right, join us in part 3 for a big announcement. Is it a new Taylor Swift album? Who can say? Welcome back to part 3 of the Tennis Podcast, where it is time for our big announcement. No, it is not a beloved pop star releasing new material. That's already been announced on a rival sports podcast. What we have to announce for you is potentially more exciting. Who can say? There are no metrics for these things. We, the collective we, myself, David, Matt, Billie Jean, TBC, are coming to Wrexham, Melbourne, London, New York, Wrexham. It's the new Big Four, folks. Wednesday, the 22nd of October, we will be coming to the Grove Park Theatre for a live audience show. It's taking place during the Wrexham Open, which is the biggest tennis event in Wales since 1996 and the biggest women's tennis event in the UK outside of the grass court season. Tickets will be going on sale this week. The Friends pre-sale for an exclusive 48-hour ticket window for Friends of the Tennis Podcast will start tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 a.m. And then the tickets will go on general sale on Friday at 10 a.m. Space in the theatre is limited. So, you know, it's first come, first serve. Would encourage you to be hot off the button if you want to come. And we are very excited. I have a lot of roots in North Wales. My parents met and grew up there. All of my grandparents lived there. My gran and all of my extended family is still there. So, yeah, this is another very Catherine Whitaker coded location, just like Shrewsbury. I'm very excited.
Yes, I'm very pumped actually as well. And the theatre is beautiful, lovely. It's not huge, but it's perfect for us, you know. And I think it's going to be a really nice environment to do this. Can't wait.
Matt, your Wrexham debut?
Yeah, Wrexham's like it's really on the map at the moment, isn't it, Wrexham? So
yeah, Ryan Reynolds,
excited
Matt
to go
Roberts.
there.
They're all going to Wrexham, folks.
Yeah. We will have a documentary crew following us around, and you will be able to watch us on Netflix in a couple of years' time about our Wrexham takeover.
It's a sporting hub. We're very excited. So, look, we will put the link in our show notes to tickets. If you'd like to get access to the pre-sale, then become a friend of the Tennis Podcast. We'll, of course, have the link to that in our show notes. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, then you'll get a alert about tickets going on sale as well. And I'll put it on socials and everywhere else too. So, Wrexham, Wednesday, the 22nd of October. Tickets on sale for Friends on Wednesday and on general sale on Friday, both at 10 a.m. We hope to see you there. Folks, we have mascots plural for this episode. We have Rafa and Lulu, who are owned by Grace Weinstein, and we also have Lana, owned by Grace's friend Olivia. This is an animals being friends situation, and I'm into it. All three of them are rescues. Rafa is a 2-year-old red heeler pit bull terrier mix. And Grace has specified that a red heeler is like Bingo in Bluey. And I can't tell you how much I wish I understood that reference, but I do not. But Grace, I will be Googling it. Matt, David, Bluey?
No.
I think it might be a kids' show. No. Lana is an 8-year-old pit bull mix, and I'm looking at a picture of them here where it looks like they're holding hands. Very, very into that. And Lulu, who is owned by Lana, is a 3-legged... Oh, my God, it's a 3-legged dog. A 3-legged Chihuahua pit bull mix. I'm going to overlook all of my questions about how a Chihuahua and a pit bull mix and just focus on how completely adorable Lulu is. Oh, my goodness me. This is a story of pet friendship and tennis podcast friendship, says Grace. I'm going to like this story, I think. Rafa and Lulu live together with their owners, Grace and Kai, in Rochester. And Lana lives with their dear friends, Olivia, Lisa and Dave. Rafa and Lana became close in part because of Grace and Olivia's shared love of the tennis podcast and discussing all things tennis. Lulu is relieved when the two of them play so she can be left alone to be the queen that she is. And also, according to Grace... How perfect is this? Lulu is a huge Swiftie and permanently in her reputation era. Yes, Lulu. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you are looking at pictures of these dogs right now. Lucky you. And if you're not, then those pictures will be on our socials and in our newsletter. What incredible dogs. That is lovely dog content, lovely backstory. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Lana. No, thank you. Grace and Olivia are the humans. Lana, Rafa, and Lulu are the dogs. Have I got that straight? Yes. Well done, me. Hello to Phoebe, to Maisie, and to Roger, our mascots, of course. Hello to Greg, Chris, and Jeff, our top folks and executive producers. Hello and thank you to The Athletic. We are a part of The Athletic Podcast Network. And Matt, we have some shout outs today.
We have Dana Douglas from Allendale, New Jersey.
Hi, Dana.
That's a great name, Dana Douglas. That's a good stage name.
Dana goes to the US Open every year, and last year she apparently weirdly loitered to try and say hello to us.
Excellent.
Well, that's very in the spirit of the tennis podcast, Dana. We're always weirdly loitering. Some of us more than others.
Yeah. I think like Dana LeConte, who was the umpire in the 1991 Connors run to the semi-final. And, I always remember that name and that visual of Connors just roaring at him. But that was a bloke. But yes, and I've been watching a lot of Connors on YouTube because YouTube just keeps suggesting Connors material to me. So it'd be rude not to, wouldn't it?
What a shout that is!
Incredible
David.
work,
Dana. I hope you weirdly loiter with success at the US Open, and we get to say hi to you.
We've also got Sapna Shah.
Hello, Sapna.
Hi, Sapna.
Sapna is from Tribeca, New York, and has been to all the slams except the Australian Open.
Oh, you got to go,
What
Sapna.
to do, Sapna?
Yeah,
well,
you got to do it.
Sapna is going to Australia for the Christmas holidays, but because of kids' college schedules, is having to return home before the Australian Open. They are going to take a tour of Melbourne Park and the Rod Laver Arena, and she wants to know whether that counts as the spectator slam.
I'm really sorry. I don't want to
I'm really sorry,
shout
but
out,
it
but
doesn't.
That doesn't count. Can't the
Just
kids
change
go
your
to college
trip.
on their own?
Just
They're
change
adults,
things.
aren't they? All the way to Australia, like 2 weeks before the Australian Open. Sapna.
The tutors will
Come on.
understand. Just change it all.
Sapna, come on. Let's get a grip here. If you need me to talk to your kids and make them understand, I'm available.
All the
for that.
tutors.
Or that,
Take the
whoever
kids.
needs to be spoken to make them really understand the situation. I'll make myself available. Thank you, Sapna.
And finally, we have Mindy Pozoff.
Hello, Mindy.
Hi, Mindy.
Mindy is also from New York, but now living in Philadelphia. And he says, as a native New Yorker, grew up 9 miles from Forest Hills.
Wow.
And watching the US Open was a yearly ritual.
It's a very New York coded set of shout-outs.
The only Mindy I'm aware of is from the old Robin Williams show Mork and Mindy, but that is not tennis related in the
Mindy
slightest.
Kaling, who I know
Oh,
you're
yes.
going to say you don't know, but you do know. 'cause
I
you've
do
watched
know
The American Office.
from The Office.
Yeah.
Check me out.
But I bet Pam knows tennis Mindies. It's a name that kind of is one of those names that doesn't really exist here, but does in America. Bet there are
Tom's
American
disappointed
Mindies.
in us right now.
Well, our Mindy says that their first in-person experience at Flushing Meadows was Sampras Lendl in 5 sets.
Oh, 1990.
Yep.
I was watching
Mindy
that
says-
the other day.
Mindy says, Catherine, Matt, everything David says is 100% true.
Yeah. That's right.
What a great note to end today's podcast on. Mindy, Supna and Dana, thank you ever so much. Folks, we'll be back on Friday with our next podcast, and then next Tuesday with the one after that. Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday. No, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday. That's how we roll now, folks. So enjoy the next few days of Cincinnati. We'll be back on Friday to talk about it. Thank you all for listening, for watching, however you have consumed today's tennis podcast. We will speak to you very soon.